Sony E-mount cameras have been massively popular for years now, but with the a7S III, FX3 and FX6 now on the market too, they are even more popular than ever before, and Sigma have been working hard to bring E-mount versions of their lenses out to give owners of E-mount systems more and more options. Well, today we are looking at their E-mount version of their popular 150mm to 600mm f5 to 6.3 sport zoom lens. Sigma currently have two different versions of the 150 to 600mm in their lineup, one in their sports line and one in their contemporary line. The contemporary being the smaller, lighter and more affordable out of the two. However, this isn't available for E-mount currently. We didn't get a chance to compare the two, but the sports is above the contemporary line when it comes to optical performance, so there should be a difference between the two. This new version looks to draw influence from them both though it does sit within the sports lineup still, it is a touch cheaper than the previous sports lens, not to mention smaller and lighter as well. This new version is available in both Sony E and Panasonic L mount only. Out of the box you get the case it comes in, the hood with the fabric lens cap, the tripod mount which is pre-attached and a shoulder strap. The lens is actually quite compact given its focal range and the fact that it's designed to cover full frame sensors. It features 25 elements in 15 groups and weighs in at just 2.1 kilograms, with the tripod collar attached. It has a front filter thread size of 95mm, is roughly 109mm at its widest point and 264mm in length. The lens has a minimum focus distance of 58cm at the wide angle and then 280cm at the tele end. It also features a 9-bladed rounded diaphragm, so bokeh looks decent even when stopped down. To keep size and weight down, the lens has quite a slow variable aperture. It starts at f5, which is the maximum aperture between 150 to 180mm. Between 181 and 380mm it turns to f5.6, and then at 381mm it turns to 6.3, where it holds through to 600mm. A slow variable aperture is pretty common in these types of lenses, so this isn't that surprising. Currently, Sigma don't produce any E-mount teleconverters for their lenses, which is a bit of a shame. However, if you are using an L-mount system, they do have a 1.4 and 2 times teleconverter available for those that will work with this lens. Come on Sigma, make some E-mount teleconverters already. There are only a few native E-mount super telezooms like this and even less L-mount ones on the market. Currently, for E-mount, Sony makes a 100 to 400 and a 200 to 600, Sigma have their 100 to 400 contemporary, and Tamron have their 150 to 500 coming out. There are also a few EF mount options that you could convert to E or L mount, but keeping native has its benefits. We didn't have any of these lenses in to compare the Sigma to unfortunately. There are 5 switches on the barrel of the lens, the first being this newly added zoom torque switch. This allows you to lock the lens at the wide end and then change the torque between 2 different stages when you're zooming. You then have an AF and MF switch, a focus limiter with 3 settings, your optical stabilisation switch with off 1 and 2, and you then have your custom mode switch which you can define via Sigma's dock, which you connect to a computer. We managed to get out and about with the Sigma with one of our FX9s. We headed down to mine and Joe's hometown to film some of the local windsurfers and kite surfers. We used a mix of autofocus and manual focus and shot on the Sony FX9's full frame 6K mode as well as in its Super 35 4K mode to get some extra reach out of the lens, as well as a handful of stills on our A7 III. The overall image looks great, and the stabilisation worked really well, and wow did it need to. It was so unbelievably windy while we were out shooting, and there was quite a bit of water spraying up at us as well from the ocean, and the lens didn't skip a beat. I do really wish we had rigged up the FX9 up properly with a base plate to support the lens better, and if you do want to use this lens the best way possible for video, a nice 15mm support system will be the way to do so. As we normally do with our lens tests, which if you want to see more of, check out our lens testing playlist which is in the description below, we ran a series of controlled tests to see how the lens performs. Though we couldn't perform our regular lens coverage tests, with this lens, as it is for E-mount, I did snap some tests with our A7 III using our light box just to see how well the lens performs on its rated sensor size. Unsurprisingly, the lens covers the A7 III really well. Light coverage is really great at the wider end, with some light loss showing towards the corners of the frame on the longer end. And as you expect, performance as you stop down is improved. Like the previous 150-600, the new version features lens stabilisation that provides a quoted 4 stops of stabilisation. On the side of the lens you have a 3-stage OS switch, off, 1 and 2. 1 is your standard mode and 2 is your panning mode. However, you can change this within Sigma's dock. We use the optical stabilisation a fair bit in our creative examples, but in the examples here I am wiggling the pan handle of our tripod while switching through the different OS modes so you can see how well it takes movement out of the lens, which it does really well. When it comes to autofocus, as you can see from the creative examples we showed earlier, it works really well. But we thought we'd try and visualize it a bit better for you in our warehouse so you can get a better feel for how it performs. Here you can see it at a couple of different focal lengths, and you can see how well the FX9 can track Sam's face, obviously until he hits close focus. But yeah, focus speed is great and not something to worry about. Unsurprisingly, the lens isn't parfocal, but that's because it's a stills lens. If you're taking stills, this will not be a concern for you. But if you're using it for video, I would suggest using autofocus while zooming to help counteract this if you can. When it comes to bokeh, we shot with the lens wide open and then at f7.1. Starting wide open, we can see that throughout the entire focal range, the bokeh holds shape really well in the middle of frame. But as you zoom, the light sources in the corners of the frame start to distort and look more misshapen. We can also see that the bokeh has hard edge definition, but looks clean from chromatic aberration throughout the range, which is great to see. The 9-bladed rounded iris does a great job of forming bokeh when stopped down to f7.1. It still looks really good with similar characteristics to its wide open performance. When it comes to distortion, as you zoom you can definitely see some pincushion distortion, but at the wider end performance is good. Breathing is really common in stills lenses and the 150-600 definitely features some. However, performance is actually quite respectable for a stills lens. It's nowhere near as strong as I would have expected, but it's definitely still present. In regards to how well the lens resolves, it's as good as you may have come to expect from Sigma. For these tests we shot stills on our A7 III of our chart, brought them into Lightroom, and then zoomed in so you can see just how well they resolve. We did 2 passes throughout the zoom range, one wide open and one at f7.1. Wide open resolution is good in the centre all the way through the focal range. However, it does fall off towards the corners of the frames, and this is sooner on the longer focal lengths. Stopping down to 7.1 improves performance as you would expect, but there is still some resolution fall off. Wide open, we can see a touch of CA throughout the focal range, but performance is pretty good given the size of the lens and the range it has. You can see it more before and past the point of focus. However, across our creative shots, we couldn't really see major CA examples anywhere. It just performs really well. Overall, Sigma's new 150-600mm Sport is a great addition to their mirrorless lens lineup. If you are after a super telephoto zoom lens like this Sigma is a great option at its $1,199 including VAT price point. It has a fantastic range, is incredibly well built, features great optical stabilisation, snappy autofocus, renders detail well but is a tad slow, but this is pretty normal in these types of lenses, and I dread to think the size and price it would be if it was faster. Let us know what you think of the new Sigma 150-600mm Sport down below in the comments, and thank you so much for watching.